teacher. I've known Shodo for a long time, probably since about 1993 when I first came here. And you started group practice, I understand, 10 years prior to that, 1983, right here.
Right here.
ZMC.
Right over there.
And in the old Zendo, you now call it. And I have her biography here. After being here at MZMC, she continued at San Francisco Zen Center, completed her formal training with 6 years at Sanshin Zen Community, where she received priest ordination and Dharma transmission from Shohaku Okamura. In 2012, she served as interim teacher at Anchorage Zen Community, led the 2013 Compassionate Earth Walk, and then returned to Minnesota to found Mountains and Waters Alliance, which is a practice place near Northfield, about an hour south of here. And she has spent the past 6 years working on a book, which she is going to tell us about this morning. It's great to have you back again, Shodo. It's always good to see you.
Thanks. It's always great to be here. Hi. So, since this is a Dharma talk, I'm going to start with the Dharma. When I give general book talks, I end with it. But I'm going to start where we all know, or most of us know. Early in my first year or so here, sometimes something would be posted or placed on the table in the hallway, and one that struck me, it said, to study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be lived by all beings. And I don't remember which version of the last line it had, but I was really fascinated by this lived by all beings. That disappeared shortly and was replaced by something that's usually said. And many years later, I don't know why I didn't ask, but I often didn't in those days. And so many years later, I was at a workshop with Kaz Tanahashi at Green Gulch Farm, and I asked him, he's Japanese, he translates, who better? And so I said this, and he said, well, it's not a translation. I went, oh, okay. And after a while, I looked into some things, including this phrase, and I found to be verified by all things. That's Okamura Roshi. To let the body and mind of the self and the body and mind of others drop off. Enlightened by all things, actualized by all things, confirmed by all things, experienced by all things, authenticated by all things, perceive oneself as all things. Oh, and another authenticated. So enlightened and realized and authenticated are popular among translators. But this was my one occasion of actually going back to the Japanese and trying to look up what the characters meant, and it was great fun. And I want to offer just a little more about that, because the way I language it, and the way I language it in the book, we are witnessed by all beings. We are words spoken by all beings. And we speak them. We all speak each other into existence. We see, hear, feel, sense, taste each other. And that's how we create each other. So that's the language that works for me about that interdependent co-origination that was one of the puzzling words when I was new here. I'm just going to mention the word study, which is sometimes learn and sometimes other things. So Okamura Roshi used his language understanding a lot. And he said the character for that is the character that shows a baby bird learning to fly. And he said, somebody said to become intimate with the Buddha way, it's as natural as a baby bird learning to fly. I once watched a mother seal teach a baby seal to swim. I've never watched a baby bird learn to fly. But it was interesting. It was like I was just there, being a tourist on the Pacific Ocean. And there's this interesting thing happening in the water. And it's like there's a mother and the baby, and then the mother disappears. And the mother comes back up again, and the baby is on top of the mother, and then the mother disappears again. And my friend and I finally figured out that that was a swimming lesson. And it's like, and the baby got a little better, but I'm sure they weren't finished by the time we left. That's kind of what we do here, right? We get helped, and then we go out on our own. For instance, we go sit zazen, which is being helped by everybody in the room, and then we go out and somebody says something rude to us. Anyway, so there's becoming intimate with the Buddha way, and then there's carrying it into the world. So we follow the Bodhisattva vow, which is not to just escape into that wonderful bliss of being intimate with reality, but to come back into the world. And when you come back into the world, stuff happens. So you don't always have fun. And then sometimes, you restore yourself. Or sometimes there are glimpses of understanding in the middle of all that stuff. So I have spent some time practicing in monastic settings or semi-monastic settings, and I've spent more time out in the world. And this book has to do with that out in the world part. So let me say, okay, so this is my copy with the bookmarks. Open reality. So sometimes you learn things by writing, and as I was struggling to do the last part of it, I went, okay, some of what this is about is that reality is not fixed. That's called impermanence. But reality is not fixed is a source of great relief and great freedom. And so this title, Open Reality, says it's not fixed, it's not hopeless, it's not too late. And that doesn't mean that people don't die and that bad things don't happen. Clearly bad things happen. And that little artwork out there where people can place a chime in memory of someone who's died. And Larry Ward, a few months ago it was Joanna Macy, now Larry Ward has left us. Oh, Robert Redford left us recently, and that's just like the most famous. We're always losing people. So we meet this. So this started out to be a book about climate change because that was the thing I was the most afraid of. But some other things have gotten scary in the last some years, especially this year. And so I used the word polycrisis, which is a newish word, but it means everything is falling apart and it's all working together, and it's scary. Meeting the polycrisis together with all beings, and that phrase is directly from all our teaching. It's when I was talking about to study the self, to be enlightened by all beings. We do this together with all beings, and that's the important piece in this book. That's why even as I saw lots and lots of people doing wonderful things while I was sitting at my computer writing, I had to bring that forward We're not alone here. You probably knew that, but mainstream American culture doesn't know it. Mainstream American culture, and some others, you know, I won't, it's like, this is where I live, so this is what I talk about. It thinks that humans are the only conscious beings, in spite of science, in spite of lots of recent information saying we're not the only conscious beings. And it also says we have to do it by ourselves. Oh, I was trying to track where that came from, and I found some things in the work of, oh, come on now, Sigmund Freud's nephew, Ed Bernays, convincing people to be consumers. But I found more of it back about the Renaissance, those philosophers, Descartes, I think, therefore I am. And so they replaced, I'm not going to praise the Catholic Church or any churches of the time, but they said that humans were above everyone. And where the Catholic Church had kind of compromised with all the local spirits and divas and pagans and whatever the local religion was, and they turned the ancient Celtic goddesses into saints, and they turned the holy wells into shrines, and they put their churches on sacred spots because they recognized the energy. That gradually slipped away. I have some notes about it and have references to where I read it. So we, for 500 years probably, depending on where we grew up, we live in a world where the official position is humans are in charge, humans have the right to be in charge, everything else is resources for our use, and all of those things are not only profoundly un-Buddhist, but they're very damaging. And the other thing that we have, which only people know about this, people think that this is the only way we can live, and we'd be dead without our cars, airplanes, pavements, cell phones. Having lived without a cell phone, lived just a little bit, well, you know, my family of 8 had 1 car, so lived without the internet for a long time. I know that these are not essential to our survival, they're convenient. And I have had to participate in actions to stop a data mining center. As many people are participating in actions about that, because it's like the preference is for convenience over survival, over real live things, trees, grasses, clean water, clean air. Okay, and so that's a little bit of a rant, but that's where the title comes from. I'm learning how to talk, as every time I talk, I learn something new. And so in the process of writing the book, so the initial thought was we should ask for help. We should ask for help from everybody. So some people ask for help from gods or goddesses, some people ask for help from the sky and the stars and the ocean and the river, and some people ask for help from trees, rivers, swamps, grasses, mosquitoes. I once asked for help from buckthorn. You're all Minnesotans, you know what that means. So there we are. It's like everyone and everything around us is an everyone. They're all people. And I've tried to change my language to remind myself and to kind of throw that into the conversation, everybody's people. And we're not the most powerful ones, although we have the best toys and the best tools. And to ask for help, you kind of have to become a different person. So most of my focus has been on becoming the different person, the one who doesn't think she's in charge of everything. Now, as a woman, I have a little advantage, but as a white American with a college degree, I have a lot of that other thing. So I was going to tell a story. I forgot the story. Oh, well. So it's about changing the story. And Ivan Illich wrote this thing. I remembered that 20, 30 years ago, I loved Ivan Illich. And so I went back and read all of his books. And I found a couple of things that were in line with what I wanted to say. This is what you do when you write, is you take stuff and pick what you like and share it. And try not to do something that would totally offend the original author. So he said, neither revolution nor reformation can ultimately change a society. Rather, you must tell a new powerful tale. One so persuasive that it sweeps away the old myths and becomes the preferred story. One so inclusive that it gathers all the bits of our past and our present into a coherent whole. One that even shines some light into the future, so that we can take the next step. If you want to change a society, then you have to tell an alternative story. So, this is, we take vows that are not possible, right? So, when I noticed sometime 20-some years ago that I had a vow to stop climate change, this is like Bernie Glassman's vow to stop homelessness. It's like, okay, so there it is. I can't quite escape it, but what am I going to do? So one of the things that I did was I learned about permaculture, and then I learned that we don't need new technology. It's like, yes, I see a nod, I see a couple smiles. We do not need new technology. We have old technology. Doesn't feel like a good word, but it's like we have old ways that have worked in the past. We have humans living on the earth for at least 10,000 years without hurting it. We have current examples of people improving the land on which they live in small ways or big ways. In northern Wisconsin, there's Menominee, logging a forest in a way that it's healthier than it was 100 years ago. It's very simple. I know lots of people doing permaculture on land. Sometimes they say regenerative agriculture, and you make it better, including cooling things down, including bringing in more water. And everyone who does this is kind of battling against the forces of industrial agriculture, or maybe it's the forces of capitalism. Anyway, there is that, a new story, and the story says there's a better way to live. And the story, Buddhism has the whole thing. So in the 6 years that I've been writing this book, I've watched environmental activism kind of switch, and most of it, the parts that I know, are now led by indigenous people offering their traditional ways, and those traditional ways include recognizing all my relations and recognizing our kinship, and sometimes recognizing that there are spirits and they do actually do things. So as I wrote the book, and as I watched things changing around me, and as I watched the forces of, what do you call it? The forces of death becoming more powerful and more suicidal, I decided, the forces of life are so strong these days, and there's so many new books. I had to stop reading new books because They were, you know, they just keep coming, and people keep acting. So I said, okay, this book is only going to be things that other people aren't already doing. So there's a section that's kind of a literature survey having to do with our human past and the transition to becoming the people we are now. So archaeologists know now that ancient societies, so we all kind of have an idea about hunter-gatherers and how they lived. There are also people who lived in giant cities who treated each other equally, who did not have kings, did not have wars. There have been people in a whole variety of lifestyles, up to industrial agriculture, I think, but who grew their food or hunted their food in a way that took care of the world around them. And we have been educated that they were primitive and stupid. But it's like, maybe it's because of the internet, but there's more information now, and we know that there are other ways to live. And we also know, I know anyway, that my skills, it's like you take away electricity and I would be exhausted. It's like I have a few candles at home. I have a wood stove, but without a chainsaw, it's really, really exhausting. I heated with wood just once, and that was with a chainsaw, and it's like, boy, that takes a lot of time. So we resist change. We want our convenience, and some of that convenience is being able to talk to each other. You know, the fact that there are a bunch of people on Zoom is like miraculous. Of course, that came to us from COVID. Okay. So, I'm looking and thinking, okay, which of this do I want to talk about? Because I want to leave plenty of conversation time. And I don't need the ones where I'm explaining Buddhism to people. This is very nice. I'm going to read a couple of things that I wrote, just like one reads a poetry, like one reads poetry. Everything lives us. Everything breathes us into life. Everything witnesses us into being. And we, in turn, live, breathe, and witness them into existence. In Buddhism, this is called interdependent co-arising. Things arise and things fall, dependent on each other, linked together irrevocably. We are neither separate nor permanent, but completely embedded in the web of life, with a spark of awareness in this individual being, as in other individual beings. We look out at each other and recognize each other. Our mutual seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, sensing is how we create each other. Okay. And then one more. This one is titled Ask for Help. A tragedy of this age is how we've thought ourselves alone. As individuals, families, towns, workplaces, states, nations, or the human species, we've imagined ourselves separate and independent. Thus, we've been unable to imagine help from spirits or gods or God. We've not asked for help from forests, even while our scientists describe the many ways forests help all those within them. Relying only on ourselves, we've damaged the others who might have helped us, who have been helping us all along. The deep wilderness is the vital heart and soul of the whole of Earth, the entire biosystem. Rather than logging and mining, we could return to worshiping, listening, receiving, meditating there, making offerings, ceremonies, humility, prayer, gratitude, and faith. So my dream that I think it's about 10 years now, and that caused me to name Mountains and Waters Alliance. My dream is that people gather together in their local places as much as possible, and do offerings of gratitude and do requests. And this goes back to a time when, on someone's suggestion, at the end of a 5-day sesshin, I took my last half day and went out into the woods. It looked like somebody was going to buy it and build a house there. And I was opposed to this. I could not afford to buy 25 acres. I had spent everything I had on my little place of 17 acres. And I visualized the sort of house that people were building there. And I did not know what to do except maybe to sell and leave and give up. So I went and walked after sitting, and I walked through the area that I considered to be at risk, and I asked, well, everyone I saw, I asked them to protect themselves. I don't think I have the right to ask them to protect me. Although it's not actually about rights, but that was my thought anyway. I shouldn't ask to protect me, but I could ask to protect you. And I don't remember how long I was out there, just walking. It was either summer or spring or fall. It was pleasant. And as I walked, consciously placing each foot on the ground, I started to feel like there was a response. I didn't hear voices. I just felt my body become different. And as it felt different, I gave back something different. And then I felt like I could know what was being said and by whom. And so here are the trees, and there kind of feels like a yes, yes. And so this is where I said I asked the buckthorn. And I remembered that because I went, they know I'm going to cut them down. But I still felt a yes from them. And now when I go out and work in the woods or in the fields or anywhere, I ask. This actually was, I had a guest who is now in Bloomington as part of the staff there. And he said, I asked him to do this thing, and he said, together with all beings, may you return to your true home. This is like invasive species. We need them out here, but please go where you belong. And this is one. He gave me several, and then I made some more. So they're written in here, but I don't have them at the top of my head right now. To recognize that buckthorn has as much right to be here as I do, and to request. Now, I've since read things, mostly from indigenous people, talking about what to do. For instance, if you're going to prune a tree, tell it the day before so it can pull its energy back. So this is all, I'm going to say this is in that level of awareness. There are 3 levels of awareness. There's the absolute, there's the interdependent, which I've been talking about, and then there's the one that we live in. What's it called? I don't know, the illusory. You know, it's like, so I've altered my illusory experience intentionally to make it match a little more what I think the teaching is. And that enables me to live more in that way. And one of the things I'm doing on my book tour is getting together with people and actually doing group ceremony of whatever kind they and I figure out together. One of those people is a Zen teacher in Massachusetts. Another one is a Sufi teacher in Pennsylvania. So I don't know what these will come as. It's like I've been doing my own little rituals in which I maybe offer incense or maybe offer a chant. And I say, could you give some energy to this? So, and sometimes I feel like I'm a heretic, but that's not what matters. I'm going to stop there and invite comments and questions. And if you don't have any questions, I'll go back to reading or talking. But I'd like questions are the best. Yes?
Yeah, I've got one. It's not related to this talk, but I noticed a few parallels between Zen Buddhism and Stoic philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's stop there. I guess what are some differences between those two?
So I can't do it because they don't know Stoicism well enough.
Okay.
I had a therapy client who discovered there's a book, Happiness for People Who Hate Self-Improvement or something like that. Yeah. And so he found this book and got very excited about it, and then he quit therapy. So I did read the book, but I don't think that qualifies me to speak about them. Thanks. Yeah.
Hi, I just had a question, like a follow-up to your story. If you were talking about the 25 acres and, speaking to all beings and asking for help or energy, like what was the final outcome?
Oh, well, so I don't know yet, but I can tell you a sequence. So the first outcome was that I was able to sleep at night again, and I relaxed. About a year and a half later, I checked on the zoning situation, and I saw that things had changed. And I went, oh my gosh, they did it. A couple years after that, I discovered that somebody was had cleared a site and was approved to build, and so I had to go inquire. There's something called boarding a building site. So when they changed, so that land became part of the Wild and Scenic District, which was my defense against that kind of stuff happening. So they changed it, but they ported a building site over. And so the only thing that determined whether you could build a site there was whether it was possible to properly put in a septic tank. And apparently they found the one spot, it's like 10 feet from the boundary between the two properties. I was showing guests when I saw this. I'm embarrassed at my behavior. I'm totally freaked out because I'm attached, It's like I think I want to do this thing and I've become totally attached to it. It's just like, I'm attached to, say, living in a democracy where people have civil rights and people are not kidnapped and hauled off to foreign countries. I'm attached to that. I'm attached to not every day hearing on the news that somebody else has been bombed or starved. So I was attached to this small thing. This is like seriously a first world problem, but I was. So there we go. And then the next thing is, there's that building site. I went, what can I do with this? I looked up the address of the owners. I sent them a little note welcoming them and hoping to meet them. I could tell they were people who like to walk in the woods because I could find their traces. And I was like, my woods, my private woods, all gone. And I decided to stay. And it's still sitting there. They have not done construction. They put markers in places, and I don't go across that line anymore. So I don't know what's next, but I know that I had two hits to my concept of what was going to happen here. And so I don't know if there will be another hit. But my thought is I have to take action and write them again and say, I hope if you decide to sell that, you'll contact me because I can probably find you a buyer. This is a lie, but I can probably find somebody. I mean, I don't have it. Anyway, thank you. Yeah, I'm supposed to say that, but yeah, okay.
I just had a comment. I don't know if people have seen the viewing shelter and storage shed going up there. The walls between the posts will be reinforced with buckthorn. Buckthorn that has been culled from various places around the state.
Oh, right. Yeah, because it can get very big. I assume it will be dead buckthorn, though.
Yes, smaller twigs. I didn't see Killian. Maybe he's being a tea cook today, but he's one of our members who's building that. And
Cool.
the walls will be made with straw, mud brick, or mud stucco, and reinforced inside between the stucco and
Oh,
buckthorn.
lovely. If you're going to do natural buildings, start with something small. Okay.
And as a carver, I learned that buckthorn is a beautiful orange. And
Oh,
make
totally.
Awesome chess pieces and
Oh,
other things.
oh, okay. I have some if you want. Yeah. Right. Okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you said to ask for help, you need to become a different person.
Mm-hmm.
What are a couple elements of that transition?
Let me start with a story. So, because I hadn't noticed this. So in my first few years, I was not employed yet. I was living on my savings. And I was doing a lot of work out there, and there's this 2-acre meadow out in the front, for instance. And I would go around and I was like, I would pull things up. And I had ideas of planting things. And I was working out there with I had some people who were interested in casual labor, and so I would hire them. And I was tugging something up, and Justin was on the other side of the field, and he said, "Those plants are really strong over here." So I stopped and looked at him, and he said, "They talk to each other." And I went, I think that means that brute force is not going to work because there are lots of them and they're stronger than I am. So I have to find a totally different way. Now, the thing about Justin, which I learned gradually, is he's Lakota. He was probably in his early 20s at that point. But he grew up in a house without running water on the Pine Ridge. His family was the caretakers of the Wounded Knee Memorial. So he grew up both deeply political and deeply spiritual. And once we had a meeting and we were talking about spirituality, and I don't remember what he said, but I was like, wow. So yeah, because he grew up that way. And those of us who grew up a different way, we just do the best we can. So that's the changing, or the whatever I said that you quoted. Sometimes it's called colonizing mind. Sometimes I think it's the mind of killing. And that has to be, it's like there's life and death, and they go on, and they go round, and all that is fine. But then there's the mind that tries to stop death, and by doing so, it stops life. And so when we are trying to kill something that gets in the way of our life, it's doomed. I don't. You can ask more, but that's my first take on it. Great question. Thank you. Yeah.
I like what you said about creating new stories.
Mhm.
One of the, I also appreciated like, starting Piper Local with ourselves and our communities and that, but something that I think about is what is a story that we can tell as our culture, our nation about this that is compelling. I worry about the way, it seems to me that a lot of the discussion is like coal versus green energy, and we're building these giant AI data centers that are gonna be just energy hogs, and the comeback to that from technocrats is, well, we'll just create lots of solar and that will absolve us from the harms. And I just, you know, I sit with that, and I just wonder about what is the story that we can tell politically at that level. And it doesn't need to exactly address that, but it's just like, I feel like the national conversation about climate change has just devolved into this like green energy versus coal thing. So I was wrestling with that as you were talking.
Well, I feel sad about that too.
Yeah.
And I recently, you know who Catherine Hayhoe is? She's an evangelical Christian who is a climate scientist. And so she puts out a lot of PR, and it's very upbeat about we can do this. And I forget what, I found I don't think I follow her. Anyway, I was in a conversation on Facebook, and I disagreed with something she said that was this super upbeat thing. I said, what about this? Well, she jumped on me, somebody else jumped on me. They all thought I was deluded. And that's what, you know, that's what civilization does, is it thinks that everybody's deluded except them. Daniel Quinn wrote about this. He told good stories too, but so the book Ishmael. And what did he say? Oh, I mean, he gave some good stories, and that they're useful and they're being integrated elsewhere. But the thing I'm trying to think of is people who live as gods and people who live in the hands of the gods. So I'm remembering reading, so I lived in the Arctic for about a year, and before I went there I read everything I could find, and I found all kinds of stuff. And one of these things was an elder who said, we have everything. This place is abundant. There's no problem. Now, I've seen this, you know? I mean, it's dark half the year. It wasn't quite dark. The sun would be up for 2 hours a day, so you had a really long sunrise, sunset where I was. And it's cold. And one of the things that's part of that culture is what to do is that some people are going to freeze to death. You know, you get lost in an ice floe and that's it. But they had the sense that things were abundant. Now, we don't live that way. We think, our culture thinks that every individual death is a tragedy and we should try to stop all of them. But only for the people it counts as people. Like right now in this country, anybody with a brown skin doesn't count as people. And I mean, I'm just heartsick about it. I'm trying to think of what story to tell to the city council in Faribault, who just decided that the data center didn't need an EIS, an environmental impact statement. And they did allow a couple of us to speak in their meeting, but they clearly thought we were idiots because it's all going to be fine. We don't need clean air. We don't need clean water. It's fine to pave over everything. It's just like Trump at the White House. And so then I think, okay, what's the story I can tell to Governor Walz? And I've thought of a few things. One of them is this is a bubble, and you're going to be left with a lot of empty buildings when the bubble bursts. And that's going into corporate speak, but, you know, Governor Walz has been very pro-development, pro-fossil fuels and he's been supportive of all that stuff. So it's like find the language, but the Faribault newspaper published a little story about that meeting, and a lot of people got mad. We need somebody to step up and make it happen, and I do not want to be it. But I'm going, okay, what little thing can I do? And at worst, there's always going to the site and camping out. We don't have, I don't have the right to build a sweat lodge and say, you're intruding on my sacred space. But that's what Native people have done. Hey, we were here first, and you don't have the right. And they're doing amazing work in the law. But yeah, it's like we live in the hands, everything supports us. We live in the hands of the gods, if you like that language. Profit is worthless. Profit is nothing. Empty pieces of paper. It's like, it's a madness. Oh. Who told me about the robbing frenzy? So you have bees and beehives. And if there's lots of honey, they go crazy and they take all the honey and eat themselves sick. And this is fundamentally a self-damaging proposition. And I heard this from this kind of wacky New Age guy who builds roofs, builds things. But then when I looked it up, I found that beekeepers know all about this, and they know what causes it to happen, and it's usually related to human exploitation of bees and, putting them in little things. But someone told me that all animals do this, so you can see the bees doing this. We know that humans do this. It's like, so I grew up in the 50s, and fossil fuels and driving cars was a new thing. So we'd all go for a drive, just for fun. I forget why that was fun. But yeah, there's a kind of mental illness, I think, about consuming.
Shodo, maybe
Yeah.
we have time for one more.
Oh, very good, thank you. Wow, that went fast. Yeah.
I enjoyed listening to your experiences of being in nature, and I very much love remembering lying in woods in alone, quiet places. But there's a kind of experience I occasionally get that I have no control over and can happen under unusual circumstances, is that I'll start with when it started. I took a weekend in the 1980s. No, it was early in the 1990s. I took a lucid dreaming, a weekend on that.
Okay.
And on the first evening, instead of having a normal dream, I almost immediately felt the bed rocking.
Oh.
And it was uncontrollable, and it felt very soothing. It didn't happen again for quite a while,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was hiking with a friend in the Rocky Mountains, and a thunderbolt came down, and it changed all of our emotions, and they became very changeable. It didn't, the lucid dreaming started some days after that, when I was still recovering. And since then, at any time when I lie down and I'm alone and there's no distractions, sometimes after some stress in the day, the bed might start moving. And it might change in different ways. The most extreme experience I've had was, I was in a long special MRI scan that lasted over an hour.
Oh.
Before I went into it, they said, would you like to watch a little movie? And I chose a movie about the ocean, and it's watching the waves.
Nice.
And as I sat there, I started feeling rocking. And when I went into the machine, because of the noise, it started getting more violent. Like sometimes I was being swished away on a long, it felt like a large canoe instead of a scanner. And one of the times I went to Kathmandu, I lived in the neighborhood of a monastery, and I met a monk, and I asked him, have you ever experienced anything like that? He said, yes, and I've met a number of other monks who have experienced things like that. So I can't imagine how it happens.
Well, I'll say it's a blessing.
But it makes me feel part of the universe. And I'm not special. I'm just, and I'm a certain area of the universe.
Yeah. I once read, and it must be 20 years ago I read this, but it was a study during World War II in Britain. And they were asking about mystical experiences. And at that time and place, they found that 15% of the people they asked had had mystical experiences, and most of them never mentioned it. 15%. So, yeah, it's like it's sort of like we shut it out, you know? Children who have special ghost friends, we just kind of think they're cute. So I do not know what's real out there.
And a lot of people who get hit by lightning are changed in some way, and sometimes it's beneficial.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't think, those things are not important, but they're nice. That's what I think. It's like the part of me that's like, well, you know, just practice. Just take one foot in front of the other, since I have the ability to walk with my feet. And just keep going, whatever it is. And there we go. Thank you for sharing it. Okay. Thank you.